Very recently, we've had the Chief of the Navy, Vice Admiral Mead, talk about the importance of our sea lanes and our sea routes. And he said recently the security and prosperity of Australia is tied directly to the sea. Over 90% of our international trade comes by sea. 5,000 commercial ships make over 30,000 calls to Australian ports each year. We've always been a maritime nation, and we need to recognise just how important the protection of Australia's sea routes are. So I'd just like to very briefly introduce Rear Admiral Jonathan Mead, AM, Royal Australian Navy, who's the commander of the Australian Fleet. Initially specialising in mine clearance diving explosive ordnance before undertaking principal warfare officer training, he's posted as an anti-submarine warfare officer in HMAS Melbourne and HMAS Arunta, Fleet anti-submarine warfare officer and executive officer of Arunta. As commander of HMAS Parramatta, he saw active service in the North Arabian Sea as part of Operation Catalyst in 2005 and 6, when his ship was awarded a meritorious unit citation and he was awarded an AM. He undertook studies at the Indian National Defence College in 2007, after which he was appointed as Australia's Defence Advisor to India. In 2011 he was deployed to the Middle East, where he commanded Combined Task Force 150, responsible for maritime service counter-terrorism, and was awarded a commendation for distinguished service. He then served as Commander Surface Force and then on promotion as Rear Admiral as Head of Navy Capability. Rear Admiral Mead holds a Master's degree in International Relations, a Master's degrees in Management. So without further ado, please welcome to the stage Rear Admiral Jonathan Mead.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a great privilege and honour to be here amongst you all. It's great to see some serving members, Anita, Tony, John, but more to the Institute, and it's a point that I always lament about, is your role is so fundamentally important in, as your charter says, encouraging, promoting, stimulating the debate and the strategic narrative on military security and the defence forces, and I think that that's something that we lack, and it's actually something that the Navy itself is very poor at communicating. You'll see through my presentation, I actually think that we are quite good at executing our role of what government wants us to do, but we are not very good in being able to explain what we do. You mentioned, Paul, that the Chief of Navy has already spoken about I think the theory behind and the linkages behind the sea lines communication and Australia's economic prosperity, and so I probably won't labour the theoretical aspects. My presentation will be more empirical, and as the Fleet Commander, I've got the remit to execute government and the Chief of Navy's policy. And as a practitioner, you'll see by my presentation will be very much about what we've been up to and what we're doing right now when it comes to sea power and sea routes. So I actually have a very short video to start with. Some of you may have seen it before. This just sort of highlights what we've been up to the last couple of months, and then I'll continue on with the presentation after. protecting the country, our security, our economic prosperity. I've shown that video, that 3-minute video, and I think that neatly encapsulates what we do. I'll go into a little bit more detail now. I did forget to forgot to mention that Paul spoke about the very sad passing of Major General Maitland. My wife is a Maitland, and she recalls many stories about when her and her parents used to have regular get-togethers with the Maitland clan over in the northern suburbs there, and his passing was a loss for Australia. You may have seen this slide before. Obviously, Australia there in the middle, land mass 7.6 million square kilometres. Our coastline is 36,000 kilometres. If you include our offshore territories and our islands, it's about 55,000 kilometres. Our EEZ is third largest in the world. It encompasses about 4% of the world's sea mass. Depending on which figures you use and which year, is between 90 and 100% of our trade comes in by the seas. To the north there, in the South China Sea, depending on which figures you use, there's about $3 trillion US dollars of trade passes through there annually. On Sunday, Paul spoke about Saturday where we commissioned HMAS Brisbane, fantastic event. As soon as I did that, I jumped on a plane and we travelled over to Western Australia to farewell HMAS Ballarat on Sunday. And she is now departed for a 9-month deployment to the Middle East. The operation is called Admiral. She is the 67th ship that we have sent to the Middle East, and that is an enduring commitment that we have in that area. When you see this slide, when you see the build of this slide, you hear the narrative about the Indo-Pacific region. You'll see what we do neatly coincides, and there's no coincidence in what we do, neatly coincides with these major sea routes, but also our area of strategic interest, the Indo-Pacific. So to the left, if I was to draw an arc, the Manitou area is probably furthest left, and if I was to draw the right-hand arc in the Pacific, you'll see another, as we get a bit further on there, we have got one of the ships at the moment, HMAS Hobart, and we do tend to focus in that area. We do have a couple of nodes which are quite specific that we put a lot of our effort and resources into. One of them is the Middle East, and you'll see that the others will develop. The Ballarat is a great news story because she has spent about the last 3 or 4 months preparing for this 9-month mission, and 4 weeks ago, 4 weeks and 3 days, she had finished her mission readiness workup, and she's a west-based ship. Many of the families are based here in the east. On a Saturday morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, we have to call the commanding officer up and say, "Hey Paul, you've got to crash sail your ship with your people, bring the helicopter, get the helicopter back, because there is the solo round the world yachts people that had turned, the yachts had been dismasted, they had lost essentially all of the superstructure, and there were 2 yachtsmen solo, separate yachts, which were badly injured, 2,000 nautical miles south, down in the Southern Ocean. And the ship sailed within 6 hours. It was able to get all its people back in 6 hours, sailed 6 days down, treacherous conditions. They recovered the stranded yachts people, brought them 6 days back. It does highlight the type of calibre of people we have in the military, and specifically the Navy, that they will do that, noting that they were about to embark upon another far more enduring commitment, 9 months in length away from their families. Her sister ship, HMAS Warramunga, returned mid-year from a 9-month deployment in the Middle East. She intercepted and destroyed 32,000 kilograms of hashish, 2,000 kilograms of heroin, for a combined street value of $2 billion. You sometimes see on TV, the AFP will do a media interview and they'll say that they've intercepted 50 kilograms of heroin around a street value of $20 million. see that they put that out on the table, and there's a lot of recognition on that, rightly so. If you look at the figures from what Warramunga did, 32,000 kilograms and $2 billion, and that's $2 billion of money that would have been used to be funneled and channeled through the region through terrorist organisations. It's $2 billion which has been taken off to stop the flow of arms up there, and the Australian ship is by far the most valued unit up there by all the nations. They operate on this framework called the Combined Maritime Forces. It's US-led, there are 32 nations involved, the Brits, everyone, and as soon as the Australian ship goes up there, all the other forces, because there's a task force that does counter-piracy, and there's a task force that does counter-terrorism, and there's a task force that does the Arabian Gulf itself, and all the task force commanders fight to get the Australian ship and the Australian P8 or P3 aircraft in, because we are the most capable, the best trained, the best equipment, and have the most flexible ROE. And we see that time in, time out. It's a real tribute to the ADF. Earlier this year, we had a task group of 3 ships led by HMAS Toowoomba, and she went through Southeast Asia for 7 months. Toowoomba herself sailed 40,000 nautical miles, which is equivalent to 1.85 times around the globe. And the area that they operated in, there were 3 ships in that task group. The area that they operated in was in the Southeast Asia domain, and they did a terrific job, not just at sea and a number of the activities which I can't talk about, but also in the regional engagement with the nations up there. We have a ship right now, actually it's a task group of ships led by HMAS Melbourne that have been operating in Northeast Asia. Melbourne is nearing the end of her 7-month deployment, and she's conducted 7 major back-to-back exercise assignment operations during that period. I had the good fortune of visiting Melbourne. She went to China, and we went to Zhangjiang to see the ship, to conduct talks with the Chinese, and this followed on from an exercise that I hosted earlier this year in July called Exercise Kakadu. It's a biennial exercise that we do. It's our largest multilateral exercise. This one incorporated 27 nations and navies from around the world, but really it was within that arc. So we had navies from the UAE, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, all the way down to 8 of the 10 Asian nations were involved. China was there, the US was there, France was there. Then we had in Iraq, we had Indonesia, East Timor, Papua New Guinea, Cook Islands, Tonga, Fiji, all the way out through to Chile. There's a reason why we were able to do that, and you probably know that exercise RIMPAC, which the Americans hosted, they disinvited the Chinese just before that exercise. But Australia is very much a valued partner that can bring nations from different regions, of different levels of professionalism, and of nations with different interests, get them together into a major exercise. There are very few nation/navies that could organise something like Kakadu. HMAS Adelaide led a task force of 5 ships and a submarine through the Southwest Pacific and then up to exercise RIMPAC earlier this year. They were away for about 4 months. You may have seen that in the media. We're doing a lot of work in the Southwest Pacific. It's one of whilst it's not a major trading route, you'll see the trading routes to the north of us strategically. Southwest Pacific is very important to us right now, and we're putting a lot of effort to redevelop a presence there in that area. We've deployed 2 mine hunting vessels, HMAS Gascoyne and Huon, up through to Korea, and they're now off to Japan. That's the furthest that we have deployed those type of ships in over 70 years. The last time was when HMAS Bathurst, a mine sweeper, was in Tokyo Bay for the signing of the Instrument of Surrender in 1945. This has been an outstanding success story. We operated up there, and we're operating with a number of different nations, and our ships found every mine that was put in our area. No one else achieved 100%, and not only did we achieve 100%, we found an extra mine which they lost from a previous exercise. And when we said we found a mine over here, they said you've got the wrong area, you've got the wrong object. It must be a rock because we haven't laid that mine. We said no, it's a mine, and they looked back, and sure enough, it's one that they had lost previously. I mean, it's been a fantastic success story. They're heading over to Japan. I said this is the furthest we've sent them in over 70 years, and they will then start wanting their way back after they go to Japan. They'll come back in late December, just before Christmas. And we intend to repeat that every year. Our survey ships, we have two survey ships, Melville and Lewin. They traditionally have operated around Australia doing our survey and charting. We've developed a very forward-leaning posture. They're now operating off Indonesia and East Timor, so that we can get a sense of what the seabed and the bathymetry is away from us. That's the furthest that they've ever deployed, those two survey ships, and they've actually got unmanned gliders in the water that they're putting in that are doing the surveying as well, and we're looking into that very closely to see what we can do in the next couple of years. APEC. So we are deploying 9 ships for APEC 18. Some have already sailed. They'll all form up in about the middle of next week to do a training exercise, and they will be up there to assist the Papua New Guinea government for APEC 18. We've also, so let's see, Sunday we farewell Ballarat, Saturday we commissioned Brisbane. On the Thursday last week we commissioned a new air squadron. It was an unmanned aerial vehicle squadron, 822X. First time we've done that. We now have 5 air squadrons in the Navy. That's the most we've had since 1984 when we had the carrier. We've got 8 flights at sea. So a flight is the helicopter with equipment, with the people. We've got 8 flights at sea. We broke our record for on board HMAS Canberra. So she had 7 aircraft embarked earlier this year. That's the most number of aircraft we've had embarked on one ship since the carrier Melbourne in 1982. But unfortunately, Adelaide will beat that in the next couple of weeks, and she'll have 8 aircraft embarked on board. And it sort of does underscore the level of capabilities that we now have in the Navy. And finally, the DDGs. We have a ship over in San Diego right now, right to the right-hand side, HMAS Hobart. She's doing her system qualification trials, which is she's going to go out to sea very shortly and fire 9 missiles. Very complex missile firing profiles these are. We're doing that with the US, and that will then certify the ship, the people and the systems, so we can tell the government that we have a level of capability to be able to deploy that ship. Obviously the sister ship Brisbane will do the same next year, and then the third ship Sydney will do that in about 2 years' time. Those ships have a level of capability which is unsurpassed in the region. In the region. They are very, very powerful and lethal warships. Paul, you spoke about the Feldy before. That is really leading edge. And on top of that, we've had some significant announcements this year when it comes to Navy capability. Probably the most important one being the government decision on the replacement of the Anzac class frigates, which is now the BAE Type 26 called the Hunter class. Ironically, the new frigate will be larger in size than our new destroyers. We have, language can work for you, but language can trip you up. So when we were developing this project, we we said it's the future frigate, and our current frigates, the Anzacs, are 3,600 tonnes. And when they found out that the frigate is going to be bigger than the destroyer, they thought we were trying to pull the wool over their eyes. And it took us a lot of work to say, look, the word destroyer, the word frigate, it's a legacy from almost World War I. Don't be fixated on that, just be worried about the capability. It's not actually the size itself, it's what's involved. But boy, oh boy, that took a lot of work and that. So that's really what Navy has been doing. You'll see that those highlighted points there correlate very closely with our sea lines and communication, and we do that deliberately. Right now, I have 10 ships deployed overseas. That's the most I think we've had deployed overseas, probably 30, 40 years. We've got the ship off the US. I have a submarine operating around in, I'll just say, see where my finger is? We've got a submarine operating around there, I go in North Pacific. We've got the two mine hunters up here, we've got Ballarat off here, we've got the survey ships here. I have a task group led by Melbourne, which has just gone through there. That's 10 ships deployed. I have right now 22 ships at sea. That's 22 ships at sea. There's 1,900 people at sea. I've got more people at sea than the whole of the ADF has deployed on operations. And noting the ADF is 60,000 strong, Navy's only 13,000. 22 ships accounts for 45% of the fleet actually at sea. 10 of them deployed overseas, and more people at sea than the ADF has deployed on ops. You can sort of see how we're very much pushing the boundaries in everything we do. I thank you for being able to tell Navy's message. It's an honour and privilege to be able to tell Navy's message. It's also an honour and privilege to be able to be in such a esteemed audience, so thank you very much.